right, we are back with It Ends With Us. I am wearing our most healthy romantic interest king today for the occasion. About a year ago, I covered the book. We knew this movie was coming, and here we are. Time just keeps happening. You don't even need to be having fun. I was actually going to cover the sequel last week in preparation, but it's honestly mostly just fan service light, and I'll touch on it a little bit here where I feel it's relevant towards the end, but if you do want a full video on that, let me know. But for those of you who do not know or don't remember, you can either check out my last video, but the quick little rundown with It Ends With Us is it is a romance where a woman named Lily Blossom Bloom, yes, that's her name, hits it off with a charming neurosurgeon named Ryle Kincaid, yes, that's his name, who progressively becomes more abusive. The point of the book is her coming to terms with the fact that behavior isn't an accident, that it's not her fault, and stopping the cycle after growing up watching her mom stay with her abusive father. Really solid foundation there, apparently based on Hoover's own mother's experiences, something I see as important because so many people in abusive relationships don't feel like they have the ability to leave. But there are some issues with how it's portrayed, what she has characters do, how they react to situations, and characters delivering the most unhinged logistics as if it's profound. I haven't gone super deep into her catalog yet, but for all the things that people have to say about It Ends With Us, much of which is valid, November 9 blows it out of the water. I have a whole video on that one. If they ever make the movie, that one's gonna be unhinged. I do think that It Ends With Us probably has some degree of net positive in terms of how a lot of people have said it's helped them get out of abusive relationships, but there are still some definite issues with how it balances the rom with the dram, or the romance with the drama, and by drama, I mean the very serious topic of abuse. I'm gonna put that warning out there. Some of the descriptions of what happened in this movie and book get quite heavy, so just keep that in mind before going forward. But for me, the biggest issue with this book in terms of how the romance is portrayed, especially how deep it goes early on, is how the readers start to romanticize the abusive characters and demanding for some kind of redemption arc out of him. That he's just passionate and tortured and needs help, but you know, not everyone needs a redemption arc and not everyone's gonna put in that work. Some people we can just toss in the trash. And even if they do the work to get better and never abuse anyone ever again, the victim never needs to be the one to come back into their life. And I feel like it's the marketing around this book, and especially the movie, that do not help this situation. Like the interviews some people are having, you get these upbeat hosts like barely adding a somber tone while describing a movie that starts as a romance and turns to abuse before pivoting into a flirty romance clip.
Can I just kiss you? That's all I need to get you out of my system.
Oh, that's it.
Just once.
I mean,
it was supposed to be just once. Now I'm thinking maybe twice.
That's unhinged, guys. Don't do that, guys. Do I gotta bring out the hat? This isn't a dark romance where everyone knows it's messed up what they're reading, but they're getting into it anyways because it's fake and a dark fantasy and not reality and not something they'd actually want to have happen to them. This is supposed to be a very real portrayal of a situation that too many people find themselves in and too many don't survive. Then there's just people that are way too focused on the outfits and little personality trait changes, and like I get the personality stuff does matter because I do feel like Blake adds a degree of charm to Lily that I didn't really feel from the book, but who cares about her clothing? I just want to take so many of these interviews and delete them. But when I need to delete myself from the internet and online data brokers, I turn to today's sponsor, Delete Me. Online security is one of the biggest issues of the modern era, and people have made entire empires buying and selling your personal information, which can then be used for all sorts of terrible things, from the mildly annoying like spam to identity theft. And that's why I trust Delete Me to identify these data brokers and work to have my information removed. Unfortunately, being a fairly visible online presence leaves me open to a lot of uncomfortable behavior, so it's always nice knowing I have backup tracking the stuff that slips through the cracks. It is almost impossible to stay completely anonymous online, and sometimes it's not even something you did. If someone in your family decides they want to sign up for one of those like lineage sites, all that information is being stored and oftentimes sold to people who have significantly worse intentions. With Delete Me, all you have to do is sign up, give them whatever information you want removed from the internet, and let their privacy experts take care of the rest. They'll generate a privacy report in 7 days and start removing your personal information from these data broker sites, whether it's your phone number, your address, names, and more. They even caught sites that had managed to link a couple of my family members to me. They send out the removal requests on your behalf and keep up with well-known brokers every month to continuously keep you protected and monitor potential online threats. So try out Delete Me today by scanning the QR code on screen or by going to joindeleteme.com/Amanda and use code Amanda to get 20% off a consumer plan. Incredible segue, lots of production drama, terrible marketing, but it's unfortunately the downside of showing a rom-com descend into a horror of sorts. Because even then, when you can start getting it more focused in on the DV issue, they have to throw in a love triangle triangle and just slam it in there so we have the good man to root for. Then, as lightly alluded to, outside the drama with the content itself is the drama with the cast that seems to be sprouting up, including that most of the cast or everybody unfollowed Justin Baldoni. Again, Justin Baldoni is both the director and the male lead. People sidestepping talking about him in interviews, a lot of back and forth about set behavior, different cuts being secretly made, Baldoni being the only one framing conversation on DV and Survivors, but finding out he hired a PR firm. But considering a lot of the worst theories seem to be originating from anonymous TikTok comments, I am not deep diving this. I know a lot of people thought it was giving Don't Worry Darling, but it's maybe potentially getting more serious than that. All I will say is that the promotion run for this movie has been wild on how different people are talking about the movie itself.
It Ends With Us is in theaters now, so grab your friends, wear your florals, and head out to see it.
I know a lot of people saw the Blake Lively casting and were instantly like, we need to save her, even though she is heavily involved in this. She is a full-on producer. She wanted to be involved in this, as well as her husband, Ryan Reynolds, the lesser Canadian Ryan. The only thing that I can confirm on a potential power struggle on the creative side is that Ryan Reynolds did apparently help rewrite some of the scenes, specifically the first time Lily meets Ryle on the roof, which was pretty much spot on with what the book was, except maybe a little bit more charm to the flirt back and forth between the two of them. So who knows? I know the screenwriter was unaware that some of this had been happening behind the scene and just thought that they were improvising on set, but oh well. Maybe more of the egregious behaviors will be confirmed as we go, but there is more than enough to discuss with the movie itself, so let's dive in, which means spoilers. And real quick before I dive in, I want to say that because they're kind of playing with the visual medium of what they can show versus tell, they do actually downplay a lot of the verbal and emotional abuse that Ryle inflicts from the book, so just keep that in mind. He is way worse in the book. So the book actually starts with her on the roof thinking about her father's funeral, but for the sake of the movie, they just show us her at the funeral where she can't think of even 5 nice things to say about him, which will be revealed down the line because he is abusive, or was abusive. So when she gets back to Boston and she's trying to clear her head on that rooftop she's snuck on, she meets Ryle, who storms onto the roof and kicks a chair in a fit of rage. And outside of that little glimpse of what's to come for her, it starts off just how you'd expect a rom-com to. Hell, even with the chair kick, it starts off the way so many rom-coms do. The potentially troubled bad boy with the dark past, the flirty back and forth meet cute. The perfect foundation to create a flipped rom-com. Start with the trope so we can subvert them for what's coming. The quirky realization that Lily Blossom Bloom is really her name and she actually loves flowers and is opening her own shop. That he is actually a brain surgeon. But there's a couple changes here from the book to the movie that I think make a fairly big difference that they definitely just wanted to save for a reveal later down the line. In both, they start telling each other naked truths. And in the book, she tells him that her father was abusive. The movie wants to save this for us to see as a flashback, so it trickles the info for why she had nothing nice to say at his funeral. But that means we miss out on this very interesting line from Ryle in the book, that after Lily calls her dad a bad person, Ryle says there's no such thing as bad people, we're all just people who sometimes do bad things. And I don't know if that's true. I think that's a nice thing to tell someone who's done something bad that they really regret, that it doesn't define their entire life, but also seems like a really easy way for someone with a temper and a penchant for taking it out on partners to absolve themselves of personal responsibility. And based on the subject matter, I feel like Ryle goes more that second path. Otherwise, it's pretty similar. Obviously, they've aged both of them up. Lily was pretty young in the book. Ryle wasn't as old as you might expect him to be as a brain surgeon. And it's an interesting juggle here where they get all this like flirty tension out when Ryle reveals that the reason why he's so upset is because he watched a little boy die on the operating table after his brother accidentally shot him. So it's like a little bit after this that he's just like, one of my naked truths is that I want to sleep with you. Buddy, your foreplay game is wild. They don't hook up here because he gets called away and she doesn't do one-night stands, but clearly that will not last. And another key detail in both the book and the movie on the rooftop is that she reveals that she lost her virginity to a homeless guy, which is a super exaggerated way of saying that she lost her virginity to a fellow high school student whose parents kicked them out. But that guy, Atlas, will be important. Because after this meeting, it does a flashback to a young Lily who they worked very hard at finding someone who looked so much like Blake. She even has the same beauty mark on her face, but it shows her seeing Atlas in this abandoned abandoned house, bringing him food, writing her journals to Ellen, which they specifically don't mention in the movie, either because it would be too weird to explain that she writes all of her journal entries to Ellen DeGeneres, or because Ellen is a pariah right now. I assume it is actually the former, because they will show her watching Ellen in a later flashback, but lots of stuff in the book is shown, but not specifically mentioned, just so it's a nice little nod to people. Like, they'll never actually mention Finding Nemo, even that's such like a huge part of this book and her mentality, but she'll have like a Nemo plushie in a room later. But her and Atlas just start getting really close. Like, they have enough in common with abusive home lives, how she'd rather have more in common with the oak tree that grows to be strong on its own over the flowers and plants that she tends to and need constant care. The movie, again, makes Lily a lot more confident in her interactions, even when she's younger, and to me, I feel like that's a lot more interesting. She's even more confident with Atlas, which was just not at all the case in the book. But these flashbacks are great because it's really just building up that connection and kindness they showed each other, pretty clear to see why they'll both kind of walk away from these situations feeling like the other one saved them. But we gotta move things along in the present. She's finally working at getting her flower shop set up when Jenny Slate walks in, and this will be Alyssa, the bored rich housewife that offers to work in the shop for free, who just happens to be Ryle's sister. So they get to have themselves a little re-meet cute, or nightmare with where we're going. It's all about perspective. And Alyssa's husband Marshall is played by Hassan Minhaj, so they really just went like the full comedy duo on that side, which is always a staple in the weird, chaotic relationship movies, I find. And they just kick off from there. They go out for karaoke, they get flirty, share a first kiss so he can get her out of his system. In the book, it was that he was gonna have to have sex with her to get her out of his system, so they really cleaned it up for the movie. But yeah, obviously that kiss works and they never see each other again. And by never see each other again, I mean that he's gonna be the first customer in the flower shop, buying flowers for her, and then they immediately kindle that romance at Alyssa's birthday party. So they start to really date, and she's basically Ryle's first serious relationship, and they make this whole falling in love montage. And I really thought they were gonna do something interesting here. They're using the song Nothing's Gonna Hurt You, Baby, and it would have just been so good if they had started just trickling in some of these like light escalating behaviors in the montage, like times where you could tell he was like maybe getting a little bit of a temper, a little bit frustrated, nothing big, but just moments where you can tell that he seems frustrated, just so it doesn't completely seem like this perfect romantic situation. I guess I can get why you'd want to show it just kind of appearing out of nowhere, but I just felt like that was a good chance to flip things up, especially with that song, because he's gonna be the one that hurts her. But whatever, at least I don't have to actually hear Ryle say the words, Jesus, Lily, you warned me. You said one time with you wouldn't be enough. You said you were like a drug, but you failed to tell me you were the most addictive kind after they have sex. I am positive I said this in the book review, but okay, Edward Cullen. It also then thankfully bypasses him begging for sex after knocking on like 29 different doors to figure out which apartment in the building was actually hers. In the movie, we just kind of cut from that little montage to him meeting Mommy Dearest. And yeah, there was like a little bit of a hint of some off behavior here, like he was offended that he wasn't already invited, and she has to really be like, oh no, it's not for you, it's because she's a nightmare. But of course he goes, and this is where things start to get a little bit awkward because the fancy restaurant they go to is Atlas's restaurant. That's the first guy she slept with. In the book, this is a huge shake for Lily. She really doesn't know how to feel. Like, he says he's dating someone else, and that kind of hits her, even though she's seeing Ryle. The movie plays a lot more chill, or maybe it just seems like that because we can't hear her inner monologue, and Blake is just too good at playing this like glowing big smile, like you're the most important person in the room, and I'm like so happy for you thing. But either way, they just kind of go their separate ways. It's this nice little meeting, and Ryle's none the wiser. But things are gonna flip with or without Atlas's involvement, because while Ryle's cooking, he accidentally grabs a burning dish from the oven without a mitt and burns the shit out of his hand. And the movie did something interesting here that almost scared me. In the book, they've been drinking, and she tries to remind him to grab the pot holder, and he doesn't, so she just giggles a bit, even though he's hurt himself, because she's like 3 glasses of wine deep with the giggles, and they were just laughing about something else. And then he hauls off and slams her into the cabinets. And he doesn't even care what he's done at first, just starts yelling at her because his hand is his career. In the movie, they shoot it to seem like an accident, like they both go over to the oven, he touches it, and then just like jolts his hand back out of reflex, which would make sense, and just hits her in the process. So I was a little bit worried. And then another scene, they do the same thing. And then before I got more mad there, I was like, oh, I bet the movie is showing us how she's framing these incidents in her mind to make it not seem like abuse because she said she'd never end up in the same situation as her mom and she never understood why her mom stayed. And I do think that that's a really interesting choice, and I think that was a creative way to show it, but my only issue is down the line, I don't know if they were quite clear enough that that's what's happening. And I know that, you know, when you're watching in a theater, you're going to get it, but so many people are going to watch this while they're at home, maybe on their phone a little bit, maybe doing some other things. So they could walk away thinking that the things he did were actually accidents, and then maybe try to excuse some of the later inexcusable behaviors because like of stuff that she's doing to make him feel insecure, which I obviously do not agree with, but there are people out there that will do anything in their power to justify some of the most unhinged bad behaviors because someone else might not have acted perfect in a situation. And again, we're just going to reiterate, there's no excuse to lay hands on your partner or anyone really, but like especially not someone you're supposed to love. And then another issue is kind of the like to maintain that framing and that we could kind of be like, oh, maybe that was an accident, like us along with Lily going through that journey with her, thinking, okay, maybe that was an accident. It also changes him being like an asshole so much of the time after these incidents before he realizes what he did. That I kind of get the change because there is a lot that you can do with visual medium versus what's written, and it would be interesting to play with that. So I fully understand why they were trying to play with perception in that way. But that also means that they take away the moments where he's being a bigger asshole, which I do think contributes so much to like the abuse overall. And of course, things are only going to get worse. You know, she's been trying to avoid Atlas's restaurant because she doesn't want to deal with what would happen if Ryle realized who he is. Alyssa really wants to go, and it ends up being very awkward because Atlas instantly notices that her eye is black and his hand is bandaged. And he does not believe it's an accident and confronts her in the bathroom, which Ryle sees them come out of. And oh my God, the tension experienced when you know that someone's going to continue being abused and something happens that you know is going to escalate the abuser's behavior is just like, ugh. And Atlas doesn't remotely believe that it was an accident and instantly has him against the wall. So that got even more interesting because with the reframing where it did seem like an accident that he hit her, they're kind of setting Atlas up to look psychotic. Like you're watching it thinking, oh yeah, this is supposed to be about abuse. I guess it's like the ex gets crazy, right? Right? So Ryle obviously thinks that she's been lying to him, that, you know, Atlas has been in her life. He's feeling humiliated, which is like just the worst combination of feelings for an abuser, which just really lays the ground for like significantly escalating behaviors where he actually feels like he has justifiable reason to be as upset as he is in some of the situations. And now she's just going to be doing everything in her power to try to avoid that from happening, both so she can not think of him as an abuser, and two, because she's so used to doing that her entire life. Like so much of the loves of her life are surrounded by abuse because the dad didn't just hurt the mom. He happened to walk in on Lily and Atlas in bed after their first time and beat Atlas bloody with a bat. Like the book says that like bones cracked. The movie really downplays how bad it was, but in both situations, she never sees Atlas again. He left town until he was old enough to join the military, and she just followed through with the promise of making it to Boston all those years later, and he did not follow through on his plan of finding her. And even though the movie has cut down a fair amount of the abusive incidents and just the general behavior he has, because it's not all physical incidents, it's just the way he says things and manipulates situations, and how she has to kind of like tiptoe around conversations to make sure he doesn't get upset. And honestly, cutting a lot of that out is because they spent like an hour on the romance side of things, which is annoying, but it's all still so tense to watch because you're just waiting for things to escalate. You're just waiting for something to trigger him. Like after that situation, Atlas stops by and is all like, say what you want. Maybe it was an accident, but here's my number, and like hides it in her phone case. So that is just a ticking time bomb for Ryle to find. But it won't happen yet because Ryle needs to propose in the delivery room after Alyssa gives birth. Love it. Amazing. So cool. Me and my friend actually completely lost it in theater while everybody was like having their emotional moments because it's just the way he was like,
Will you marry me, Lily Blossom Bloom?
and then like I snorted and then she lost it, and then we kind of like built back and forth on each other, and I'm sure some people hated us, but like, I'm sorry, it was funny. In the book, it feels a lot more like beautiful disaster, like him overhearing her saying she'd marry him and him saying he'd marry the shit out of her, and then they elope in Vegas. Holy shit, that is almost exactly like beautiful disaster, you know, minus using the wedding as a fire cover-up. But yeah, they're married. Incredible. But as I mentioned, we have that ticking time bomb there, and Ryle finds the damn phone number. Whether he actually dropped her phone by mistake and saw it, or if he went snooping specifically to find something, he knows whose number it is. And you know, she thinks she has him calmed down, but then he smashes the phone, storms out, she follows, and he pushes pushes her down the stairs. Again, at this point in the movie, it is visually framed as like a mistake where she kind of tries to get in front of him and trips. But I will stress that it is not a mistake. He just tries to tell her that it was. Like, I get it. No one wants to see the number of their girlfriend's ex hidden in their phone, but maybe take a second to think about why someone would have felt the need to hide their number in a phone case. Especially if you're not finding any illicit conversations between the two of them. Like, yeah, ask some questions, but the escalation is just, it's too high. And while I thought it was cool the first time they did it, I don't actually love that they do the memory reframing here where it actually seems like it could have been an accident, because in the book it was just this like horrific thing for her to be like, no, you pushed me, and him just maintaining that she fell. Because again, it really takes away from the movie being able to show that Ryle does just have this subtle rage within him, and it's this thing that she's been like tiptoeing around. And there's this cruelty that he has in so many of these situations, how his tone and body language changes. I don't know if it's an issue with the director being the abuser and struggling to really portray it, but yeah, Ryle fucking sucks and is terrifying, and just the way they're choosing to play with like what you're seeing on screen and how it wants to let us as the audience in, it pulls away from the full degree of abuse that she's experiencing. It's cool though, we are getting to the end when the most horrific incident occurs. So Lily's Flower Shop is on the list of the 10 best new businesses in Boston. So exciting, so great. Everybody should be rejoicing, except, Atlas Restaurants gets the #1 spot, and that is obviously the only thing Ryle cares about, because he notices that Atlas is talking about this girl he used to love and how Lily is alluded to in so much of his answer about inspiration to the restaurant name and a bunch of other things. In the book, the restaurant is called Bibs, but they went with the name Roots in the movie, which he says is based on what she said about oak trees and how he had carved this girl that he loved a heart out of some of that tree's wood. A wood carving she still has, and is the inspiration for the tattoo that she has on her collarbone, because that's where Atlas always kissed her, and that's where Ryle currently likes to kiss her. Obviously not something she ever told Ryle, because early on you don't see there's like much of a point to that. It's just this like, it's a tattoo I got when I was younger, and then after the Atlas stuff goes down, you can see why she probably wouldn't want it to ever mention it to him. And again, I don't want to see one person being like, well, he wouldn't have gotten this way or been that bad if she had just told him like every single thing, because that is not true. The behavior escalates before Atlas is even remotely back in the picture. He is just an abusive person, and he's gonna look for any reason to do that. But his rage about the tattoo specifically is sickening. Warning for people who've struggled with abuse of any kind, the physical, the sexual, on the sexual side, it doesn't specifically happen, but that's not for lack of trying. He does try to force himself on her, then tries to bite the tattoo off her body. Easily one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, because she is just desperately trying to get him to like focus on her and realize what he's doing and listen to what she's saying, and it doesn't matter. He just keeps saying things like, I guess I just haven't shown you how much I love you, which is just like, oh my god. In the book, this whole situation is way worse, because he figures all this information out by reading through all of her old journals. So he is literally getting upset at the thoughts and writings of a 16-year-old and choosing to apply it all to the present. And you know what? Who cares? Even if she is only in Boston because she was hoping to run into this guy, she picked you, dude. Then he ends up knocking her out because she's trying to stop him from escalating the situation, and wakes up later to sneak out to call Atlas for help. In the movie, she gets away before he can hurt her more than the bite. Not that the bite isn't enough, but like it was multiple things in the book. And she goes to the restaurant and gets taken to the hospital just for the bite. But in both, they don't do the x-ray because they find out that she's pregnant. Literally the worst case scenario. But Atlas takes her back to his place to recover, and this is when she finally reframes all the incidents in her mind to realize that he has been intentionally hurting her. That he hit her on purpose, that he pushed her down the stairs, that he brutally bit her shoulder, and the crushing realization of the situation she's in. All swirling into this worry that if she managed to get herself into a situation she promised she'd never be in, how is she going to be able to take care of a baby? But Atlas is obviously here to push back on that, telling her that she is the only reason he's alive, and that no matter what she chooses, she'll be great because she is that oak. She is that strength. The movie really cuts back on the amount of time that she spends at Atlas's place. Like, she had met his friends in the book and a bunch of other stuff, but like, it makes sense, we can only spend so much time on this in the movie because we already spent so much time on the buildup of the romance at the beginning of the movie. I do find that the movie steamrolls through the end here a little bit, bit. Like, this has a lot of pacing issues. So, like, she heads back to her apartment to start working on all the baby stuff because she decides to keep it. And Atlas tells her to keep him in mind if she's ever ready to love someone again. So this is obviously where things start to get complicated because Ryle is obviously the father of this unborn baby. Alyssa thankfully tells her to stay away from her brother because of everything that happened. Like, she kind of tries to reason out the behavior. I never mentioned it, but half the reason why Ryle was so pissed about that kid dying at the beginning of the movie is because he accidentally shot his older brother when he was 6 years old, and she's pretty sure that changed how he turned out. And yeah, I'm sure it is, but accidentally killing your brother as a child isn't remotely an explanation for abusing women as an adult. I'm just saying. It's an explanation for a lot of personal behaviors and things that you struggle with, but, a lot of people are going to have those same struggles and not actually escalate to the point that they, physically harm other people. The most Alyssa really says is that, as a sister, she wishes Lily would forgive him, but as a friend, she needs her to stay away from him. So I guess that's something at least. And this is where we get the Taylor Swift song, Tears Ricochet. It just fits so well with the movie, perks to being besties with the lady herself. Definitely a better choice than that Ethel Cain serial killer song. Now that would be a movie. And it's just going through the motion of her getting ready for the birth. Like, she finds out she's having a girl, which you can tell kind of adds this whole other level of fear to her because it's got to make her think about the situation she's currently in. And while she was initially ignoring Ryle, soon enough, she's inviting him around to help set up the crib and get all the baby stuff done. And you just don't know what she's going to decide. And that's why it's so tense. The book is worse. Like, even if you were like 99.9% sure she's leaving, even if you were 100% sure she's leaving, it's the fact that she lets him move in or moves back in with him so that he can take care of her before she gives birth. It just made me want to pull my hair out. Like, how could you be relaxing prepping for your pregnancy when you have a fucking bomb in another room? This is also in the book world where a lot of people started feeling sympathy for him, that he's trying, that he deserves to be around for his baby. And honestly, no, maybe legally, but in my mind, if you abuse the mother of your child, I don't know how much you deserve to be around the kid if you can't prove that you're not also a risk to that child. Because again, the movie really does not manage to convey how manipulative Ryle is. They just kind of have him on these flash anger, bad feeling trips, whereas in the book, it's like he says so much cruel stuff. He is so menacing. And in the sequel, where they are trying to co-parent, he's just downright scary at times and uses the baby to try and get what he wants out of Lily and control what she's doing with her life. Like, he is a garbage human who deserves nothing. And I, for one, was horrified to see him in the delivery room in the movie, but it does lead to a good scene where she realizes that the last thing she wants is her child to go through what she did growing up, and frames it in the best way. If our daughter came to you and said that her boyfriend was hurting her, what would you want her to do? Would you want her to stay? And of course his answer is no. So he actually does leave, and that's her promise to the baby, that the cycle ends with them. And yeah, she actually says, it ends with us. So this is where the movie really switches things up compared to the book, and that was on the recommendation of a domestic violence survivor group. In the book, she's working at co-parenting with Ryle, and it does not go well very much at all, especially once he realizes that she is not gonna get back with him. It is not good. He's not even willing to get help and actually scoffs at the idea of therapy and does continue to escalate behavior when he gets frustrated with her. He's just a really shitty guy. So she might not be with him technically, but that kid is going to be putting up with abuser tactics used against her mother and potentially her, and be put in the middle of those abuser tactics because Lily never documented anything that he did to her, and he has the money to pay for a better lawyer. So he's always going to be around. Really shitty. I hate it. He sucks. The most he agrees to is that he won't have any overnight visits, which she says is because those would have to wait until she's old enough to tell people if something happens to her, which should be enough for anyone to want to seek therapy, but guess fucking not. Maybe I do need to cover that book separately, because Jesus, it frustrates me so much. I get it. This is fiction. I get it. In the real world, things happen, and there's lots of people who are terrible, abusive partners that would never do anything to the kid. But in this specific situation, he has shown that he is willing to use that kid to continue to abuse the mother. That changes things. But again, we're not talking about the books, we're talking about the movie, and it does end similar to the book with her running into Atlas a year after the birth of the daughter, except here she says that it's just her and the baby, and that Ryle has agreed to stay out of the picture, which is just absurd to to me, considering that his sister is Lily's best friend and employee, and I'm really supposed to believe that there is no scenario where Ryle doesn't come into contact with her and the baby, but as long as they don't do the sequel, we're fine. They won't have to retcon this. Look, even though I said they haven't confirmed it, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get one. As it stands though, we can just imagine that she continues doing well, that her and Atlas rekindle their love and it's amazing, and that she's amazing and she pulls herself all out on her own. And it's cute, I suppose. I like Atlas, but in a lot of ways it almost feels like it takes the emphasis off her having the strength to leave the abuser and be kind of her own strength and putting it back on the rom-com train, but that's fine. Honestly, as much as I like Atlas as a character, I think it would have been really interesting if he had never come back around, like if he wasn't in this book as an actual person at all. If Ryle really was just shadowboxing a memory when he realized how much of Lily's life had been formed by this person and creating the jealousy out of that. Because that's basically what he's doing, except he adds in more justification because that person is physically in the same town as them. So I think it would have been interesting to see it escalate without that, because that does happen so much. But again, we gotta give the people someone to root for, and if Atlas gets the people off the Ryle train, I guess I'll take it. But yeah, that's pretty much the movie. I do think it has some pacing issues. I think some of the framing is interesting to make it so that it's like, okay, we're following along with the way she's seeing the events happening, or the way she's trying to convince herself that the events are happening, and we're seeing it in the same way. I thought that was really interesting, but again, pulls away from some of his abuser tactics, because it can't show us those in that moment if she's reframing it in her head as not an abusive situation. But hopefully it still ends up being a net positive out there in the world, that it helps people, recognize bad traits in people that they're with and get to safer situations and protect themselves and the people they love. And other than that, I've seen worse. We've watched worse. We've watched things that are significantly more unhealthy. But I guess the issue I can kind of see here is that some of the things that are so over the top unhealthy are not trying to be some kind of piece of media to inform you about how to live life or show you healthy things. It's just fantasy fulfillment and entertainment, whereas this is trying to kind of breach into that gap of, saying something. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Did you read the book? Did you watch the movie? What did you think about them? Again, I will say that I fully understand why her books are so popular. They are so easy to get through. They're breezy. They keep you kind of on the edge of your seat in places. So even if you're not enjoying what you're reading, or if you're horrified by what's happening, it is still so easy and pulls you in to get through. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.